Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the governance work session where we're going to look at the facilities and transportation OE. So 2 questions. Yeah. One of them being, are we fine with the words that we have listed as our values on the OE? The other thing that we've talked about for a while, and Dr. Garza has mentioned this, just because we have the values, we might want to decide we still want to state the value, but we don't need a measure about it. And then I know there's already the next step from Megan, getting information from staff about where some of these measurements should change and where some of the information maybe they would suggest we don't put in it. And then the other thing that I would like to bring up is the timing of the report. I think Dan mentioned this when I looked at the report, and you look at when the data is pulled and when we are reporting it, that I don't know if there can be a better match from that. So first question, are people comfortable with what we have stated for our values under this? Are there any requests for us to look at that and make any changes? Okay. Next point is that, and it's already out there from Megan, so as long as we support that idea, that we have staff come back to us with any suggested changes from the measures and reducing some of the information. Is that fine? Okay. And then, are you okay if we look at the timing of the report when the data is pooled and to figure out when the best time to report this out is? Okay. So do we have those 3 we're fine with what the OEs state. We're going to have staff come back with some feedback about the measures to see if anything can be deleted or changed so we have relevant information we want. Sandy?
A year ago, we had also asked that one of the measures be deadhead time as well as miles, and that went to the governance committee. And it wasn't in this report, but I think, we need to remember to put it in next year's report. If it was, I didn't see it. And it's deadhead miles, but not time. Time. That's what's missing. Yeah.
So I want to make sure I capture that. Deadhead miles, but right now it includes time.
It now includes miles, and we want to add time.
Okay. Do you know what measure? It would help if we kind of knew where that was. The report currently has deadhead time. We want...
It currently has miles. We want time. Yeah.
Okay. It has I can't even talk. Deadhead miles. We want the time.
Let me see if I can find the measure.
So Sandy can find that while we do page 40. Okay.
And Kathy, can I add one thing too?
Elizabeth.
I've had several requests, and Mr. Plattenberg and I have talked about this, but it turns out they do not track it, is what I call, and I thought they called it too, the students that are hazard bused. So those are students that live under our walkable, like, so we say, it's a mile. Is it a mile? A mile. So they live within a mile, but we wind up busing them anyway because we've decided that there's some kind of hazard. And that, I think, could be helpful in the future, particularly as Ms. Evans was bringing up, like the housing situation. If more houses are built that are close in proximity to schools, but then the infrastructure isn't put in place to allow those students to walk, then that becomes an additional burden. So we've got to know who's hazard bused, because we have kids that live outside that mile.
I'm going to throw it out. There's a request to get information about how many students are hazard bused. Pat.
I agree. I think it's more than just how many, it's where. And I think, the reason being, when we talk about safe routes to schools, there might be ways we could work with the county to put a police officer there or something. That would something, right, yeah.
Il-Young?
Could we possibly put all these additional requests in a parking lot so that when the staff comes back with their suggestions for modified list of measures that we can all discuss them together.
And I think that's a good point to remember, because we throw these out and then we'll take it to staff and see what can happen. Then we'll come back to the board for a final determination. I think I had Patty and then Sandy and then, oh, not you? Okay.
Okay, I found the measure. It's measure B6, and we did discuss this last year, and it did go to governance, and so we completed the loop on that one. So that's I think, is that enough to move forward with that? Okay.
Okay, Megan.
Going off of our prior conversation, I wanted to see if we capture this in some way. We were asking about all the ways in which, and it might have been Sandy who asked this, all the ways in which we bus students. It's not just to their base school, but it might be for special education programs, AAP, all the reasons. And that isn't a standard part of the report right now. So I didn't know if this is the appropriate time to, as Mr. Moon said, either put it in the parking lot, but that would be my support and advocacy based on what I thought I heard my colleagues saying, which is, as we try to understand our growing costs for transportation, it really is the fact that it's not just getting kids to their neighborhood schools that's having a real impact on our operations.
So a consideration of whether a standard measure in the report would reflect the type of services we provide busing for?
Yeah, I guess I would defer to Dr. Garza on the language, because I guess you could term it the type of services, but I'm just thinking of the transportation services that are impacted by the program offerings, because it really tends to be more about based on the program and yeah, based on the educational services we're giving those students.
Okay, do you guys have that?
I think I have.
Okay.
You want to look at it now?
Let's wait 1 second. Dr. Garza?
Kind of like the idea of us capturing them and taking them, and if you think of something outside of this, we'll just keep working on them.
Janie?
I know that there's always an interest in benchmarking ourselves, and as we go back to staff and say, how can we make this more efficient and powerful, looking again at, are there other areas where you can benchmark? People have already brought up cost per student ridership. I think some of that is in Wavy, because that is something that we've done in the past. But just where else can we benchmark? I think they've done a very nice job in particularly the environmental and efficiency stuff. Very, very nice job. So it's always looking for there are more opportunities to do this. Thanks.
Okay, so providing benchmarking data where possible.
And their professional judgment, because
Right.
they will know where
Right.
it's possible.
Okay. Dan?
I mean, I mentioned it when I spoke. Just I think there are some elements in this that are too far down in the weeds for what the board really is interested in. And I'll use the example that Ms. Pottenberg used about, damage to a bus mirror. I mean, I think we're looking at significant impacts, and accidents for us would mean probably something that would involve students at least being present that might have some other longer-term consequence.
So, and I want to capture that piece because you brought it up a couple of times. I think there needs to be a better definition so the public and the board understands what preventable accidents are. So capturing something about that, because what the preventable accidents are, but then the whole picture look at this is going to be that balance between too much in the weeds and good information. I found for myself, reading through this, some of it was like, oh, that's neat to know we do it. I don't want to discuss it as a board, but then is it easy to put together in what? Because there is a difference of opinion. It's nice to have stuff in one place, but finding that balance. Okay, so are we good? Patty?
Just reflecting a little bit about something that FPAC said a while ago about us having a facilities capacity crisis, and whether or not taking a step back, this gives us the kind of information that we need. I know that, of course, the CIP kind of provides that kind of information, but I wondered if my colleagues might find it helpful. I alluded to it earlier, about this intersection between the academic programs and the facilities. I mean, we've talked about the relationship between the academic programs, or services, I guess you called it, and the buses. But what about this idea of getting a sense for the programs and how that's impacting the facilities? To me, that's begging the policy questions about the programs and where they are. You know, should we have academies all over the place? Should we have AAP centers all over the place? So the question that I'm asking my colleagues is, would it be helpful to capture this information in such a way that we can see the impact of our decisions on programs and services to the facilities?
So my first feedback of that is I think that's CIP stuff, not necessarily the OE. That I think that's more of a CIP discussion on how you put that. I don't know that that's a measure that staff would provide to us. I don't know if Dr. Garza has any input about that piece, but I'm trying to think, okay, what measure would get you where you want to go? And to me, it's this broader discussion with the capital improvement program and how we place things and the impact. So I don't know. I'm looking for some help with that.
I think I think my immediate reaction is that probably does need to be in the CIP, but I think it is an important conversation. I'm not sure that that's the right answer about where it needs to be placed, but we've talked about that quite often, is we cannot make programmatic decisions in isolation anymore. You know, because it does affect transportation, it does affect our capacity, facility capacity down the road. So I think we need to have broader conversations around how we make strategically placed programming. So I don't know where the best place to put it is, but I do think it warrants some very serious conversation.
Well, back to what Mr. Plattenberg listed as the three key issues: capacity, staffing, and bus parking. To me, he's kind of telegraphing that he thinks those are the areas that we should be focusing on, right? Those are the key areas. So capacity, to me, again, when you get into the CIP, it's this forest for the trees issue. And I feel like when we start looking at a report such as this, and we get so much information, you know, we start asking, did you ever wonder about this and how about that? I think that we do need to have a serious discussion about capacity. And I do think that it should be when staff comes to us once a year. So I'm still struggling a little bit. Maybe we ask governance to kind of explore this in greater detail, but it does beg the question, if we've talked about just a few minutes ago the transportation and the programs and services, why wouldn't we talk about facilities and programs and services?
In my mind, we almost need a decision-making matrix that helps lead us through a series of questions about program placement. That would include, what is the long-term capacity of any particular school that is being considered? What are the transportation costs or implications? So to me, it's almost like a decision-making matrix that we'd have need for.
Pat?
Well, I guess we talked a little bit about how APAC is in a conversation. Am I missing something? Yeah. APAC is already in a conversation about how those AAP programs are affecting capacity and what to do about it. So I don't know, I feel like these are complex conversations that are happening, and I agree with you, they need to be on our radar, but I'm almost thinking that I agree, I don't know how this report can move us along once a year. It's almost like something we have to be talking about all the time, you know. But
Tammy?
I agree with the last two comments, particularly Dr. Garza's, about trying to have some type of matrix, because they cannot be not intertwined, and to have an easily identifiable measuring point, it seems almost impossible, because you get into it seems simplistic, but as a county as big as ours, even if they're housed centrally, some of these programs, they would have unfair disadvantages to certain. So that's why it has to be kind of a decision-making thing, a matrix of some sort, making certain that we continue to talk about it. And I think perhaps this situation, because I know that has been one that people have talked about for a while now, the AAP centers and the facility issue, and kind of watch and learn from them and see what they're doing. But I do think staff may have to come back to us at some point on some kind of matrix.
Special education programming is also has a significant bearing.
Yes, it does.
On this conversation, just like AAP.
So this is the concern I'm hearing. A couple people have spoken up. The concern is about the relationship of program placement with our capacity issues. Can we just send that concern to the superintendent and let her get back to us on how we deal with that? Are we okay with that? So, I mean, I guess if we want to capture it somewhere, we could throw it up there that the board shared their concern. It's not really governance, but we don't want to lose it. That the board shared their concern about program placement and capacity issues and asked the superintendent to get back to us about that. Is that okay? Okay? All right. So let's see these so we can move on. Okay. And while they're going to pull that up, we moved our governance meeting. It's not happening till Thursday, so the only update really is that we have the retreat Friday and Saturday, 3 to 7 and 8 to 9. No, till 4. 8 to 9. Yeah, I'm being silly. I'm looking forward to our conversation about that and with our strategic planning and all. Okay, so here we go. Refer to the governance committee review of measures to determine which ones can be eliminated. Staff will look at it and then come back to the governance committee. So really, it's staff to review. Right, staff to review the measures, and then they can bring it back to the governance committee.
And can I take out in order to focus and just then bring back?
Sure. And are we good with just eliminated, or do we want to see it reviewed and/or eliminated, or not reviewed? Yeah, modified and/or eliminated.
Can be modified.
Or eliminated, we were saying. Because there might be things they want to keep or report it differently. That's part of what we talked about. Okay, staff to provide deadhead times in addition to deadhead miles. I'm happy you got that. Staff to consider the timing of the annual monitoring report. Staff to consider including a standard measure to reflect the type of transportation services. I didn't capture that one like that. I thought what we were looking at was the type of programs we provided staffing for, I'm busing for, like AAP Center, special ed, discipline, that type of information. Wasn't that what that one was?
Transportation services offered by program category?
Here?
To reflect the type of, it's not the type of, okay, did we care about the type of transportation services too, whether it's a bus, whether it's a taxi?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so the type of transportation services offered by program.
Yeah, that's good.
Take the S off of programs. Okay. All right, does that make sense? And do you understand that? Okay. Staff to consider including benchmarking data where possible. Staff to develop a definition of the different types of bus accidents to explain the data. I guess that's okay. You know what we're talking about. And
Why don't we just do this?
Okay. Board chair concerned about program placements and capacity issues. Okay. Are we good to go? Okay, this work session is done, and somebody can tell us when lunch is over.
We will have a 30-minute lunch break. We will resume at 1:15.